How is everyone? I'm so excited to be talking to you today about paragraphs and transitions. What does it take to make an excellent paper? Excellent papers have both strong paragraphs and strong transitions. Paragraphs are the building blocks of our paper, and they are held together with transitions. Transitions are words or phrases or sentences that connect ideas in our paper. Transitions are like signposts that give readers an idea of what they should expect in the next paragraph. Transitions are important because it makes the meaning of our paper more clear and because it makes it much easier for our reader to read what we have written. If you'd like to learn even more about this topic, you can click on the link in the description below, and if you would like to read about how this will be connected to competencies, you could read that in the description below this video as well. At this point in the video, I would like you to pause the video and find a piece of writing that you've been working on for one of your classes. If you do not have anything to work on, I would like you to go to the description of this video and pull up the example essay. Now that you've finished step 1, I would like you to move on to step 2. Evaluate your own work or the example provided and think, where should my transitions be? Are they there? Do they make sense? Do they help with the overall flow and organization of the paper? Next, assign yourself a grade based on the rubric provided.
Hi everyone! So, of course, I'm teacher Cora, and today I'm so excited to be walking you through our lesson about how to create good transitions within an essay that you're writing. So the first step whenever you're thinking about how to use good transitions is to take account of the two paragraphs that you want to connect and to identify the relationship between them. So a lot of times, for example, if you're writing a 5-paragraph essay, you might have gaps in between the two paragraphs, but you still want to have a good organizational flow the entire time. So transitions are a little bit like signposts, like Anne was saying. They show us where we're coming from in the paragraph we just wrote, and it also shows us where our essay is going to go. So it kind of keeps the reader engaged throughout your entire paper and keeps them kind of up to speed about what you're trying to tell them. You can have transitions in different areas, so a lot of times you can have transitions within a paragraph itself. Perhaps you have one sentence leading to another, and so transitions can be very helpful there. But today what we're going to be focusing is on between paragraphs. So if you're writing a longer essay, how do you make sure that you have a really good flow, that your essay is very smooth, it's not choppy, you have a good organizational structure the entire time? So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So as we think about our two parts of how we can use good transitions, we can go back to our first sentence here. So first we have to take account of the two paragraphs we're connecting and identify the relationship between them before we can move on to using transitions. So as you can see here, we've got a great chart that you can actually go and access in the links underneath the video. On the left here, we have our logical relationships. So we're going to talk about this a little bit more in specific, but this is kind of how our paragraphs are relating to each other. And here you can see that we have some good words that we can use as we attempt to make our transitions between these paragraphs. So for example, let's say you are having two paragraphs next to each other. They're very similar. They're sending you very similar ideas. Let's say you're talking about how baseball is the best sport, and then you want to continue on with the same idea. You could use words like also, just as, similarly, and that tells the reader that you're going to continue talking about what you were just talking about in that paragraph. On the other hand, if you have one paragraph and the next paragraph is totally disparate or different, it could be good to have an exception or contrast word to use. So these can be words such as but, however, on the other hand, or on the contrary. Okay, so as you can see, these are probably our most simple ones, but if we go down here, we can see that there are a lot of other examples, such as time. If you're walking through maybe a story of someone for like a narrative essay that you're doing, we also have example. Maybe if you're trying to highlight one important point that you really want the reader to understand, cause and effect. So if you're trying to explain the relationship between a situation and kind of what's happening because of it, or things like a additional support or evidence if you're trying to make a persuasive argument, and give the reader more information about why your viewpoint is the correct one. So this is a great chart for you to use. I would definitely recommend coming back and referencing this as much as you need to, okay? Great, so that's a little bit of the background information about transitions, but of course we have to try to practice this in order to make sure that you can really understand. So here I'm going to show you two different paragraph examples that we've created. Try to see if you can figure out how to make them better using some of the transitions that we just went over. Then we'll go ahead and show you suggestions for how we would want to do this. Okay, so here's our first example. I'll go ahead and put up. I will go ahead and read it for you, but if you'd like, you're more than welcome to pause the video and read it by yourself as good practice. Okay? So, long breaks from school can be wonderful. During these breaks, both teachers and students have a chance to relax a bit and refresh their minds. These breaks are also a chance to visit family and to travel. In addition, they afford teachers and students the time to pursue interests beyond the academic. Perhaps there has been a novel you've been meaning to read. A break from school is a great time for you to read that novel. Breaks from school are detrimental to the learning process and should be done away with. While students are away from class, they fall out of practice in their studies and become rusty. Many themes and skills that have been building in the classroom discussions can become lost in the fog of recreation during breaks. These losses must then be compensated for upon a return to school. This is a case of misspent time and effort. Okay, so now what I want you to go ahead and do is pause the video, take a minute, and think about how are these paragraphs related. Okay, so go ahead and just take maybe 30 seconds and try to see if you can think about that, and then whenever you're ready, go ahead and restart the video again. Great, so I hope you had a little bit of time to think about it. So let's talk about how these two paragraphs are related. So if we think about the main idea in our first paragraph, we see that it is long breaks from school can be wonderful for different reasons. It helps people relax, refresh their minds, give time to do other interests like reading novels, lots of fun things. Breaks are great, okay? But however, if we're looking at in our second paragraph, we can see that it's actually a completely different idea than in the first paragraph. It says breaks from school are actually detrimental or very bad for learning and should be done away with, or we should get rid of them because of all of the negative effects that they have on students and learning whenever they're not there. So on the first hand, breaks are great. Second hand, breaks are very bad and we should get rid of them. Okay? So currently right now, it can be very difficult for a reader to know exactly what you are trying to argue here because your paragraphs are totally different. So really this is a great place for a transition in between these two paragraphs, so that way we can have a good flow and it doesn't seem very choppy with a lot of different ideas. Okay? So they're contrastive, or the ideas are opposite of each other. So what we should do is we should go ahead and include a transition, kind of like a reading signpost we were saying. Okay? So if we think about our solution, we can actually go back. We can actually go back to our chart and see that we have exception or contrast. So if you just go back to this chart from UNC, the really helpful one, you can see that we have all of these helpful words that you can use and insert in your writing to show that you're going from one idea to a totally different one. Okay, so let's go ahead and break that down. So here are some possibilities you could say. Say, with that said, I believe, but while there may be some benefits to school breaks, they are not entirely beneficial. It may sound then like breaks are great, but though many students see breaks this way, it's wise to recognize other considerations. So as you can see here, we have a mix of kind of short words and then also longer phrases. So as you're starting out, using this chart and using kind of the short words is very helpful for you. But if you have more time, it's great for you to really think about making a more verbose or longer phrase to help really flesh it out. Okay, so this is a good time for you to go ahead and think, which one do you think is strongest? Are there other transition words that we didn't include here that you would think of that could help link our paragraphs together? Notice that if we are inserting a transition, it will sometimes be easier for us to tinker with the wording of sentences directly prior to and subsequent to the transitionary sentence or phrase. So don't be afraid to change what you already wrote in order to make the transition more smooth. Okay, so here we'll go ahead and show you where we've inserted the transition in our paragraph. So just to highlight a little bit, perhaps there's a novel you've been meaning to read. A break from school is a great time for you to read that novel. It may sound then like breaks are great, but breaks from school are detrimental to the learning process and should be done away with. So this is a great way for us to link the idea that it may sound like breaks are great, but on the other hand, it's not actually helpful for learning. Okay, so I hope that's a good first example about how we can relate those together if they're contrastive. Let's do number 2, okay? So here we have our same paragraph again that we just used about how breaks from school are detrimental to the learning process and should be done away with. So this is just from the previous slide. And then what we have is another paragraph. So it says, when students are away from school, they are away from their social group. There are many types of learning that take place during school, much of it not strictly academic. By being away from their classmates for extended periods, students miss out on the growth that comes from social interaction with a peer group, something so essential to transitioning through adolescence to young adulthood. So if we think about our main idea of our first paragraph, we see that breaks from school are detrimental to the learning process. So when students are not at school for a long time, it's really bad for their education, okay? And then here in our second paragraph, our main idea is when students are away from school, they're away from their social group. So we're saying not only are breaks bad for academics, they're also bad for social life at school, okay? So what I want you to pause and think about is how are these paragraphs related? How do the main ideas relate to each other? Okay, so go ahead and just take maybe 30 seconds, pause the video, think about it, and then you can restart whenever you're ready. Okay, so I hope you had a little bit of time to think about how these paragraphs are related, and we can see. Here, we should again take a look at the relationship of the two paragraphs, or more specifically, the relationship of the second paragraph to the first. Here we can see that it is offering evidence for the negative impact of school breaks, much like the preceding paragraph or the one that came before. So let's provide a transition as a guidepost for our readers to let them know that we're continuing to offer evidence. So I kind of gave you a little bit of the answer here, but if we look on our chart, we can see that we're looking at additional support or evidence. So we have our idea, breaks are very bad because they hurt students academically, and furthermore, more information that we can provide, they're also bad because they hurt students socially. Okay, so here are some great words that you can use. Additionally, equally important, furthermore, moreover, then. Okay, here are a couple other possibilities that you can use a little bit more fleshed out. If you have more time and you want to get beyond this, you could say, not only do students miss out on valuable instruction time during breaks, but they also miss out on socializing with their peer group. So here we say not only and but, and we tie in our first idea, missing out on valuable instruction time and socializing. You can also see our second example. In addition to breaks causing students to become rusty academically, they can also become rusty socially. So here, in addition, we say rusty academically, rusty socially, tying both of our paragraphs together, okay? And lastly, you can just say something simple, such as furthermore. So again, I want you just to pause and think a little bit. Which one of these transitions do you think is strongest? Can you think of other ways we might construct a transition between these two paragraphs? So once again, we went ahead and put this in here for you, so that way you can have an idea. So here we say these losses, so the academic losses, must then be compensated for upon a return to school. This is a case of misspent time and effort. Not only do students miss out on valuable instruction time during breaks, but they also miss out on socializing with their peer groups. Because when students are away from school, they are away from their social group. Okay, so here I hope this provides a good example about how you can take two completely disparate or different paragraphs and tie them together and use it to flow really, really well in order to create a better essay overall. Once again, don't be afraid to change a little bit of your writing whenever you put this in. It's all just to make your essay better overall as a whole.
Congratulations on completing this video lesson. Now it is time to apply what you have learned. Add or improve the transitions between paragraphs in your own work or in the example provided using this resource. Next, reevaluate your work or the example provided and assign yourself a grade. In this video lesson, we worked on the skill writing transitions between paragraphs. Transitions are like the glue that holds our ideas and our essays together. Transitions are words, sentences, or phrases that connect ideas. They can be located in paragraphs, between paragraphs, or between sections of your paper. Transitions between paragraphs act as signposts for readers, giving them an idea about the direction that our paper will be taking. Transitional phrases such as another example or here's an exception or although this idea appears to be true provide readers with a sense of what to expect next. Transitions provide important clues about how your ideas fit together. Transitions help you clearly communicate your ideas effectively through writing. To learn more about this topic, find resources in the description below. To learn more about how this skill will be evaluated through competencies, find it in the description below.